All right, good evening, everybody. The intro segment to this video was going to be a entertaining, high production value clip, but life happened, and it's been a rough November. If I can be candid, I'm going through a divorce, a bankruptcy. The house is falling apart, cars breaking down left and right. It's been a heck of a November. But it is Thanksgiving, ironically enough, and I do have a lot to be grateful for. So despite all of the troubles, my children are the most amazing human beings on the face of the planet. My friend Irina has been tremendously supportive. I love her. My extended family and the rest of my friends have all been amazing. There's a lot going right also. And whenever I'm out here in the observatory and looking up at the wonders of deep space and just taking in the unimaginable forces at play and distances, and it's hard to feel that my problems are very large. And I'm constantly reminded of Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot speech. We're so lucky to be here, and we're so close to each other. And the universe is such a big place. There's no time to sweat the small stuff. We just got to make the most of it and be grateful for what we've got. And there's always things to be thankful for. So, I'm going to try to get more videos out. I know you guys all need information. I've been letting the channel slip. And today we're going to talk about the Hyperstar. And some of the pitfalls you might be facing should you decide to purchase one of these notoriously persnickety devices. They're not easy to use. But we're going to talk about, I hope, everything you need to know to use your Hyperstar on Thanksgiving today. So, without further ado, let's get on with the show. We've got a lot to get through, so buckle up. I'm going to try to be concise. I'm going to try to be exhaustive. So, you might want to take notes or, just watch the video again. But yeah, a lot to get through. 3 main points, okay? We've got corrector plate centering, collimation, and sensor tilt. Sensor tilt, I already made an entire video about it. You can go watch that one if you like. But yeah, those are the 3 main things you have to do to get the most out of your Hyperstar. If you ignore one of those tasks, you're going to be disappointed. You get a 500 millimeter refractor. It's like a family sedan. You get in it, you go get groceries. It just works. There's not much to it. But this is a little more like a race car. Okay, it's going to take some patience and some effort to get the most out of it. But once you do, it's going to blow your mind. I swear to God, you'll be, I take like 30-second exposures through a 6 nanometer hydrogen, a narrowband filter. That's pretty wild. I can do it. I guide just so I can dither and stuff like that, but I don't even need to guide. Okay, first of all, we'll cover a few miscellaneous things, and then we'll go through the 3 big challenges. First of all, attaching and detaching the Hyperstar. You will want to put a little bit of lubrication on the threads, because my Hyperstar seized onto my secondary holder, and I could not get it off. I had to take it off, take the whole thing apart, put it in the freezer, put a strap wrench on it. I thought I was going to break it, but I finally got it off. But now I put a really thin layer of super lube on there. I haven't had a problem since. So, you don't want a ton of gunk on there where it's, getting on your fingers and getting on the optics, but just a little layer of something. Old filmies would use black shoe polish on their filter threads. But yeah, just put something on there so it doesn't seize, because it might seize. And when I take mine off, I put a latex glove on. and then put my hand right down on the corrector plate and put some pressure against the secondary holder so that I can just kind of snap the Hyperstar loose off of it, and it won't loosen up the secondary holder, because if your secondary comes unthreaded, then you lose your index, and you know, it can just get ugly from there. So yeah, attaching and detaching the Hyperstar. Next, cable routing. You don't need to buy a fancy cable router. I made this. Just a bit of, this is a coat hanger and a plastic ring and some hockey tape, you know, and it does the trick. So just a ring to hold your wires out, keep them curving out from in front of the light path. Or if you want, you know, if you want diffraction spikes, you can run them straight off of the camera out to your dew shield. So yeah, you can just you can make a simple piece of junk to get the cables out of the way, and it'll work. You don't need anything fancy. Wow, my corrector plate is dirty. That is really showing it up. I need to wash that. Okay, but yeah, cable routing, camera rotation. There are a lot of screws on the Hyperstar. They can be a little intimidating, but these three with the big washers on them are the rotation screws. You loosen these up and you can rotate the whole body, and then you tighten them back down, it'll hold it in place. That's handy. So these are your rotation screws. Well, let's move on to corrector plate centering. You will need to center your corrector plate. When you get your telescope from the factory, your corrector plate will be tuned in such a way, it'll be oriented in the way that it best eliminates the problems that are inherent with the spherical primary, the astigmatism, the spherical aberration. The corrector plate will probably be shifted, maybe significantly, so that it, you know, evens everything out and corrects, hence the name, corrects the defects in your spherical primary mirror. So yeah, to get the most out of your Hyperstar, you'll have to center it, because you want the light cone coming up directly perpendicular and even intensity into the body of the Hyperstar. If you don't, you will struggle with off-axis aberration, coma, severe vignetting. I mean, like the left side of my image was just black before I centered my corrector plate. And it's not terribly complicated. I see some, you know, people building jigs and, you know, lasers flying everywhere to just get it so perfectly centered. It doesn't need to be that perfect. It doesn't need to be surgically precise. I've set this Hyperstar up 3 times now, because I switched back and forth, and every time I just eyeballed it up, and it performed well just with eyeballing. So when you start to center your corrector plate, the first thing you want to do is completely remove this retaining ring. There's 8 screws in here. You'll have to kind of compress it to get it past your cover notches here, but you pull that retaining ring right off, and then you want to document the position of your corrector plate. Take a little paint marker and mark it. Take a micrometer, measure it at each of these 4 screws, the set screws here, and just document carefully exactly where that corrector plate is, so you can put it right back there when you want to switch back to F10. If you don't, you will struggle mightily to really tune up the longer focal length configurations. So yeah, document carefully the position of your corrector plate. Then, once it's documented, back your set screws out a little bit, and then pull the thing right out, and make sure to check the side of it to see where your secondary is indexed. Your secondary has a notch in it. The holder has a notch in it for the pin to keep it indexed. And now make sure there is a mark on the side of your corrector plate to show you where that thing is supposed to be. Because if there's not, and your Hyperstar pulls the secondary holder loose, you will struggle to get it back into position. So make sure you have an index to let you know where your secondary is supposed to be pointing. After everything's documented, then you can center it. You remove your secondary mirror, and all I did, just stand back like 5 or 10 feet, have it kind of pointing horizontally, not directly horizontally. You don't want the plate to fall out, but you want it, pointed kind of low. And then I just closed one eye, put the reflection of my other eye right in the center of the baffle tube, the corrector element in the baffle tube. I centered my eye in there, and then just took note of the reflection of the secondary holder and the secondary itself, and then adjusted it until everything was nice and concentric. And that was enough to get optimal, what I feel is optimal performance out of my Hyperstar. So just eyeball it up, center your eye over the baffle tube, and just make sure you can tell. Make sure the secondary corrector is evenly spaced around the baffle tube, and the reflection of the secondary corrector, you can step back and forward to make it bigger and smaller to kind of size it up, is evenly spaced around your secondary. The reflection on the primary is evenly spaced, and make sure everything is nice and even. And then your corrector plate will be centered enough to get the most out of your Hyperstar. And what I did was I tilted it down, and then loosened the screws that were on top, loosened them way up, and then just used gravity and the bottom 2 screws to push it up and move it around and get it into position. Once you've got it into position, just snug the screws back up. You don't want any pressure on the plate, okay? Just till they touch. Because they've got nylon tips. This is a huge piece of glass. You don't want to damage the nylon tips. You don't want to put pressure on this glass. It might shatter it. I've seen that happen. It is heartbreaking. Be careful while you are doing this. Always make sure that you back the other screws out before you try to push any screw anywhere. If you try to push on it and it doesn't have anywhere to go, you might be in trouble. So if you need to move it, say this way, make sure this one and these 2 are loose so that these aren't pinching it and it's got room to go that way. So make sure you got plenty of room to move it when you start trying to move it. And then you put your ring back on and just snug those up too. You don't want to put any pressure on them because when you start, the front of this corrector plate is a curved surface, right? I don't know if you know that. That's the way you can tell if you've got it oriented correctly. You look at it side on, and the back is flat, and the front has a graceful curve to it. So if you're tightening this flat ring down against this curved surface, you're going to cause it to warp a little bit and affect your performance. So just snug it up. So corrector plate is centered. Then put the Hyperstar on. Don't crank it down. Make sure you got a lubrication. Just turn it until it stops. Do not try to tighten it down. Your spacers, your filter, drawers, whatever. Put your camera on, hook your camera up, then get it into focus. And then get it out of focus. Turn it into little donuts, and that's when you collimate it. Now, if you've never collimated anything before, this might be challenging, but just be patient. There are probably about 5,000 videos about collimating telescopes on the internet. It won't be hard to find. You do it by adjusting these push-pull screws. There's 3 sets of them around the body of the Hyperstar, and these adjust the angle of the Hyperstar to get it perpendicular with the axis of your light cone. Get your focal plane perpendicular with the axis of your light cone. So the way these work is one screw is your pull screw. This goes through the body of the Hyperstar and is threaded into the base. The other one is threaded into the Hyperstar and pushes on the base. So these 2 screws work in conjunction to lock the Hyperstar into a specific position. And the best way to do this is to get a good starting point. I back the pull screws off a little bit and use a piece of cardstock to set it, and then lock the screws back down so you've got a little bit of play in every direction. And then you take your defocused star and you adjust these screws until you make only the star in the center. You only want to worry about the center. The sides might look weird, but you look at your star in your center and make that a nice even donut. If one side is fat, you've got to move that star toward the fat side in the frame, and then recenter it and check again. You will only have to move 1, maybe 2 sets of screws, never 3. If you're moving 3 sets of screws, you're urinating into the wind. So move 1, see how it goes. Move it more or back the other way if it made it better or worse, and then move a different set, and then you will be able to make those donuts real nice and concentric there. And then once the center stars make really nice looking donuts, you're collimated. Bring it back into focus, and then start messing with your sensor tilt. And you can go watch my other video for that, because that is a whole process on its own. But if you take the time to get those 3 major steps down, you know, get your corrector plate centered, your Hyperstar collimated, and your sensor tilt really dialed in, you will take some amazing pictures with this thing. So that's about all I wanted to get through. I'm going to do some shooting. The next 2 nights are going to be clear. So I will show you what the Hyperstar can do. I'm just going to do like 45-second exposures probably. But maybe the Rosette Nebula because it's so beautiful. But I'll pick something easy and fast. And then just to show you what this thing can do. And if I might remember something else and we'll go through it then. But I'll catch it on the flip side at the computer and we'll wrap things up. Okay, back inside. I shot the bulk of that video almost a month ago, so we've had some clear skies too, so I've had some time to work on some projects. I've got 4, actually there was like 5 or 6 of them, but these are the ones that are closer to being finished. And there were 2 things that I wanted to talk about that I did not go through in the original video. One was backspacing. The backspacing on the Hyperstar is so very critical. It is so critical that you might have it completely dialed in with a 1mm filter, and then you switch to a 2mm thick filter, and that will be enough to throw it off, and you'll have some, you know, your stars will be stretched out in the corners because that little bit of extra glass is enough to screw up the back focusing, and you'll have to push it out a little bit more with your tilt plate screws to really get it dialed back in. But yeah, back focus or back spacing is no joke with the Hyperstar. That's something you've got to be very careful about. You will get the correct spacers from Starizona, but you'll probably have to, you know, do some slight shimming or tweaking with the tilt plate screws to get it really perfect. This is the first project I did, the Rosette. Everything I've done here are just 1-minute exposures. These are 1-minute exposures with 6 nanometer narrowband filters. You can see we got really nice signal here. Nice faint dust out at the edge of the Rosette Nebula. Beautiful details. But that was the first project I did with it. Second project I did was the Pleiades. This was an RGB image. I used the Deep Sky RGB filters from Astronomic, and I'm not very skilled making RGB images with a monochrome camera, so this is lacking, I feel, but it's not terrible. You know, we've got good signal. I just think my processing is not up to snuff here. But yeah, this was the Pleiades. It's all right. I'm not unhappy with it. I just think I should be able to do better. So the second thing we need to talk about is the number of subframes you can accumulate when you're shooting, you know, 30-second to 1-minute exposures. If you shoot all night on a filter, you know, you can't put an automatic filter wheel on there, so you might as well just shoot all night on a filter. And you're shooting 30-second exposures, you're gonna have like a you know, 800 subs when you wake up. And if your computer is not up to scratch, you're going to be stacking for a while. You know, my computer is not some kind of state-of-the-art speed demon, but it's not an old piece of junk either. And like I did 750 subs the other day, and with all the bells and whistles and integration and stuff and weighted batch pre-processing, it took like 3 or 4 hours to get through it. So yeah, that's something to consider when you start using the Hyperstar. I just started this project. This is like 6 hours of hydrogen and only 2 hours of sulfur. So this is HSS. That's how this is blended. But really nice signal in this dust so far with only 8 hours of integration. Really enjoy, and these Max FR filters. There's no halos. That's a beautiful Ulm attack. That's hydrogen and sulfur. I still need to find some time to shoot more sulfur and then some oxygen. I want to do an SHO with RGB stars on this project. We'll see if my patience holds out. But yeah, the signal's looking really good here. And last but not least, this is the first time I've done the Andromeda Galaxy. This might not be for everybody. I did a starless Andromeda. I love this. Okay, this blows my mind, but I caught flack for it on the internet. Everyone's like, "Oh, it's so fake. Add the stars back. This is ridiculous. What a joke. It's a cartoon." But I did catch flack for this, but I like it. I think it's beautiful. I mean, if you could get outside of the Milky Way, that's kind of what it would look like. So, screw you, internet. I like it. Take your own photographs. But anyways, so yeah, that's about all we have to talk about concerning the Hyperstar. It is, it takes a lot of work, but if you have the patience and the tinkering ability to really get it dialed in, you can just scream with it. You can knock out projects in a single night. With a one-shot color camera, you will have enough signal for a great picture in a single night easily. So that's the trade-off. If you want to shoot at f1.9, you're going to have a finicky system. If you don't have the patience to tinker and to readjust things and to document and dial things in, if you don't have the patience, then you might be better off just buying a 500 millimeter or a red cat, a refractor or something. It'd be a lot easier. It'd be slower, but it would be a lot easier for you. But I really enjoy being able to switch between, the Hyperstar and then reconfiguring it and then to go do planetary. I really enjoy the flexibility that it gives my 11-inch SCT. But anyways, let's go take a look at the photographs in detail and listen to some music and be thankful.